Hey there. Welcome back. My name is Matt, and today we will be exploring some more Cirklon Aux Events, specifically the inter-track events. I have the manual pulled up on my trusty iPad, which I'm also attempting to use as a DAW these days. We'll get into that in a different series. I have the Cirklon sequencing the third wave from Groove Synthesis, which is a great multi-timbral wavetable synth, which works really well with the Cirklon because we can sequence 4 different parts in here. You essentially have 4 6-voice synthesizers, and that will specifically be nice for today because we'll be using the inter-track events to swap values with each other, which we'll be able to hear quite well since we'll have 2 different timbres on the third wave. I'm actually not sure how much we'll actually hear the second timbre rather than just grabbing values from it, but we'll see. I went through these a few days ago just so that I wasn't coming into this totally green, but I'm still by no means an expert. So we'll probably read the manual a bit more closely today than the previous video, and maybe follow some of the examples. For now, I just have a simple sequence going with 1 track, using some of the randomized aux events that we explored in the previous video. But let's get moving right along. Okay. Excuse the awkward reading angle. But getting into inter-track events, these refer to events that cause interactions between tracks. So you can either grab, swap, or push values between each track. And there's the concept of the current track and the target track. In our case, we'll use track 9 as the current track, and track 10 as the target track. On track 10, I just have some slight FME sine wave modulating another sine wave. We might want to differentiate these sounds a little bit more, but we won't overcomplicate things for now. Okay, I think we'll actually reset these sequences and follow the example directly. So I'll go ahead and delete this first pattern. And I think it's just C4 all the way down. Okay. I'm just taking off the LFO, any effects to help it remain as clear as possible what we're actually doing here. Okay, and then on pattern B, I just deleted all the events from track 1, so we'll re-add those. Okay, and it has us adding C5 through D7. I wonder if that's a nice slope that I can just quickly add. No. Okay, I have a scale on, which I'm going to turn off. And then C, D, E, F, G. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. Okay, I think that's correct. And all the other velocity and length values remain the same. That was getting irritating quickly. This is somehow slightly less irritating. Okay, and as it instructs, we are muting track 2, which in this case is track 10. Okay, we are now going to change the aux event to the intertrack grab event. And in this event, the value is the track that you want to grab. So right now we're actually grabbing from track 1, which I believe is just C3 or C2 or something. So you can actually hear it dip down. But we want track 10. There we go. So steps 1, 5, 9, and 13 are now grabbing the value from track 10, which is the target track here. So if we go back to track 10, we can see that it's grabbing C5, G5, D6, and A6. And if I change one of these values, you can see that the value change in track 10 is applying to track 9. So that's quite cool and a little easier for me to wrap my head around. Okay, so if we set every value on the current track to point to track 10, then it will, in theory, just play all the notes from track 10. So let's just try that. Okay, that seems like it's doing that as expected. But I think I prefer the previous approach. Not quite sure why you would do this. I guess mixing with other aux events, you could probably get some interesting results. Okay, we're just going to read this for a bit. Perhaps mute this. Only the note values are being grabbed, so if you were to turn off some of the gates in pattern A, it would double up some of the notes in pattern B on the track 1 instrument, not play all of them. I don't think I know what that means. Let's just keep moving. Another interesting use is to grab notes from a pattern with a different length. Okay, when I was exploring this earlier, this is what felt the most interesting to me. Okay, so we're just doing the downbeat or every fourth note. 1, 5, 9, and 13 we're grabbing from the target track, and every other note is from the current track. But now what we can do is go to track 10, and if we change the time base, which is essentially how fast the pattern is running, right now it's running at 16th notes. If we change it to 32 notes, then you can hear it's grabbing different notes. So you have this shorter pattern on track 10, but it feels longer because it's grabbing notes from a longer pattern, or from a slower pattern. And I believe in the example, without reading this, is on track 9, we have a pattern that is only 16 steps, but we're now grabbing every value from track 10, the target track. And because track 10 is going at an extremely slow speed, basically one note for every 16 steps, you have this super long pattern on track 9. If we want to speed this up a little bit, it's a slightly more obvious effect. And then what we could do is change the pattern playback method. So like we could do pendulum on track 10, and then that will modify how the replacement, what the substitute is for track 9. So now we're doing a random note for the target track. Essentially we're grabbing a random note from the target track on the current track. So yeah, you can play with the values here and get some very cool generative results pretty quickly. I think I mentioned this in the first video, but what I really like about the Cirklon is you can make things feel generative with an enormous amount of control. I struggle with sequencers where you just kind of hit a button and it generates things. I like to really set the parameters myself. Okay, moving along. Okay, so the manual actually calls out setting the direction to random, and this can be a much more selective way of randomizing notes in a pattern than using the basic randomized note event, which is what we went over last time. And what's so nice about the Cirklon is because you have so many tracks, you can really dedicate different tracks to just these aux events. I'm sort of realizing this as I'm talking through it. You don't need to, like with any other sequencer I've used, you think of a track as sequencing an instrument. But for this, tracks can just be modifiers, basically. So you can really build these complex systems, which is really cool. As the manual suggests, we are realizing some of the apparently complex modulations of patterns. I think this is a really well-written manual. It feels exploratory, and we're kind of, I mean, I have read through this section before, but we're kind of coming to the same conclusions as it's calling out. Okay, moving along to the slightly more complicated intertrack events. So the push does the same thing except in the opposite direction. So currently we're grabbing a value, but instead we'll be pushing a value now. Doesn't get super granular into what that means. So let's just try it out. Okay, must not get lost in sound design. Okay, so for track 10, we're going to switch this aux event to... Actually, we'll listen to track 10. And on track 9, we will push values. It would probably be beneficial to not have this sequence randomized. Okay, we'll start boring. So now track 10 is our current track in this scenario. Or we'll call it the target track still, but it's just playing C5 over and over again. Now going back to track 9, which has C4. We'll do C6. Changing my mind about the approach. Okay, we're gonna do E5. And we're gonna push those values to track 10. And nothing is happening. seems like when it's unmuted, then it's working, which surprises me because grab seemed to work when it was unmuted. We're just going to turn down. Yeah, so I've turned down track 9 on the synth itself. When the track itself is muted, then it doesn't do the push. Oh, I suppose that's because with grab, if the track is muted, then the aux event itself won't actually trigger. Okay, that makes sense to me. So when track 9 is doing grab, it's obviously unmuted, so the aux event is firing. But when we're doing the reverse, this push event won't actually take place. Okay, so that's interesting. So you have different use cases for each of these. If you want to modulate another track and not hear that track, you'd probably want to use the grab event on the track that you're trying to modulate. Interesting. My foot is very asleep. So we're going to readjust for a sec while we read about swap. So it's essentially doing a grab and a push at the same time. So here we're getting the same kind of grab effect. I guess we need to change some notes. Okay, here we go. Sorry, it took me a moment to sort of figure out what was going on. Okay, so just for clarity, this is the track 9, the current track. That's the timbre of that track. And this is the timbre of the second track. And track 9 is what's driving swap. And so when you have both, that's quite cool. When you have both, you can hear track 10 just doing its thing. And you can hear track 10 getting those push events applied to it. But then you can also, I think we should be able to hear, yeah, the modification of the grab event, which is also part of the swap, with track 10 muted even. But yeah, I'd argue you get some more interesting results by having them both enabled. If you had like drastically different timbres, that could be cool. Okay, hopefully that makes sense for those three main intertrack events. I think we'll leave it there for now. We'll finish the section. And you can see that target values cannot just be notes. So let's see what that looks like when setting it. I only see note on here. Oh, I see. Okay. So when you go through, basically the encoder, let me collect my thoughts. The encoder scrolls through both the track numbers, but then also hits these other parameters. So you have note, and then if you keep scrolling, you get velocity and length and delay. Oh, and if you hold the encoder in turn, it seems to jump the value that you're modifying. So it maintains the track and jumps the value. It's a sleek UI decision. Yeah, we have the obvious things that you can modify: note, velocity, length, delay, gate, tie, whatever. All pattern values replaced. That's interesting. And then we have some more granular things. Current note value plus any accumulator offset. We haven't gone into accumulators yet. Yeah, so you can get wild with this thing. Replacing aux events with the intertrack events. And I think we'll leave that here for this video. Mostly because my feet are very much asleep and I need to stretch. And we'll do a shorter video for transpose by events next time. Thanks for watching.